Minister of National Security will be here. He is here. So let's hear from the Minister of National Security, the Honorable Stuart Young, to provide a security update.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Minister Cox, Cabinet colleagues, Minister Robinson Regis, Minister Dial Singh, members of the media, wider viewing and listening public of Trinidad and Tobago. I have come here this morning really as an appendage to address a specific issue, and that of security and the security of Trinidad and Tobago at this time. But before I get to that, I'd really like to take the opportunity to thank the vast majority of our population in Trinidad and Tobago for heeding and adhering to the social responsibility measures that we've put in place, the stay at home, stay safe and stay alive. By and large, especially with the latest measures that came into place yesterday with the closure of groceries and pharmacies at specific times, we have found that the vast majority of Trinidadians are adhering. This morning as well, in my daily meeting with the Commissioner of Police, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, the Chief of Defence Staff, some officers of the Defence Force, as well as our intelligence services and the NOFC, we are monitoring what is going on. Population of Trinidad and Tobago. In national security, and I dare say in every ministry in Trinidad and Tobago and any successful business, you try as best as possible not to be reactive. You try as best as possible to look on and to predict as far as you can down the road and to take proactive measures when you see things that may be coming on the horizon. At national security, one of the things we do is we try to plan for the worst and hope for the best at the vast majority of times. The issue of crime and criminality, as you know, is an international and global one. The coming of this global pandemic of COVID-19 has affected the whole globe, and you see how things are happening in other areas of the world. And one of the things that we did a few weeks ago, even before we started to have the number of positive cases coming from the Ministry of Health and the information related to it, is we sat, this is along with the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, or Trinidad and Tobago Defence Force, our Prison Service, and our Intelligence Services, and the National Operation Fusion Centre. And we began planning and plotting for possibilities, eventualities, and certain issues that we believed could take place. You also know that we have limited resources, that is with our police service and our defence force, and I will tell the population very shortly what it is that they are occupied doing. There is this massive body out there of persons who have a certain element of platform training in assisting in security and assisting in helping the population to feel more safe and secure. So, at the urging of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, as well as consultation with the Trinidad and Tobago Defence Force, I took a decision at national security level after certain consultation for us to begin exploring, should this COVID-19 make us increase measures in Trinidad and we then have to spread our resources further, what are the opportunities or what are the options available for us at national security to try and relieve some of the areas, not fully, but to provide assistance to our Trinidad and Tobago Police Service and our Defence Force. And when you look around the world, one of the first areas that comes up is those who are supplemental security services in Trinidad and Tobago called the private security firms. This is an area that was looked at. What was interesting is that in February 2014, the then cabinet, the then government, took a specific decision with respect to the utilization of that, at that time, of certain private security firms. So we went back because I don't believe in reinventing the wheel, but I always believe a wheel can be improved upon if it makes sense. At the time, what we foresaw was that we needed to keep the population safe, and in particular areas of the population, especially if there were going to be certain measures put in place. The first thing I'd like to say, the utilization of these 4 security firms are the same 4 security firms that were approved by Cabinet in 2014 for the same neighborhoods throughout Trinidad in a pilot project initially in the north, in the east, in central and in south of Trinidad throughout a variety of neighborhoods and a wide-reaching expanse. This was being done with no additional powers being granted to these private security officers. They were merely being asked, they were not even armed, to patrol neighborhoods quite the way that we see in a lot of neighborhoods throughout Trinidad and Tobago now, Lange Park in Chaguanas, Palmis in South Trinidad, and other areas where you have private security officers just driving around in vehicles. If they see persons can stop them, ask them if everything is okay, but they are not intrusive. At no point in time was this concept meant to implement or to enforce any of the measures passed in the regulations to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic. It was really to provide extra eyes and ears, feedback into the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service and our National Operation Fusion Center for us then to be able to dispatch our resources if and when needed. Of course, these patrols were not going to go into areas where there is a prevalence, of criminal activity known as our hotspots in Trinidad and Tobago. But what it would have allowed is our police service and our defense force to focus on specific operations that need to be carried out, and also, especially at this time, when we are being called upon in national security and in particular our police service and our defense force to do a lot more. The population would have realized by now, because we're into about our second week of stay at home, but our third week of us implementing measures, closure of bars, closures of restaurants, closures of clubs, closures of casinos, the closure of our borders. And persons would by now recognize and realize that we are not in normal times in Trinidad and Tobago. And what is happening is you then have persons congregating. As we've been saying, the Ministry of Health has been telling us throughout, the fight against this virus is a fight against contact spread. So even when we had persons at one stage gathering outside of the banks and the supermarkets, it took a couple of days before they began understanding the social distancing and what that means for each individual on a personal level. We asked the banks and the supermarkets to put markings for persons to understand where they should stand. Who did the population at that time call upon to enforce personal social distancing? The Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. Is this something that Trinidad and Tobago Police Service is doing throughout the country on a normal basis pre-COVID-19? The answer is no. But of course, their resources were being called upon. Also, there was the discussion of people gathering and rushing to these places and a need for a presence. The Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force stepped in to provide support. At every stage in our operations, in particular over the last few weeks as we've dealt with more and more measures geared towards keeping the population safe in this COVID-19 pandemic, our Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force has been playing a purely supportive role, not only to the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, but in particular to the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Social Development and other areas. So I'd like to use this opportunity now to just give a very brief report as to what it is our Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force has been very busy at work. Understand the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force, like armies, regiments, and other military organizations across the world, they are not into public relations. They do their job very effectively, efficiently, and quietly. But in my conversation this morning with the Chief of Defense Staff and his officers, I said it is time that we start telling the population and providing them with the information as to exactly what our defense force is doing. Because there's some very loose conversations taking place that there are thousands of persons on our defense force and they're doing nothing, and very derogatory statements being made about them shining their boots in camp and this type of thing, which is the furthest thing from the truth. Right now, we are assisting with the socially displaced and vulnerable in Trinidad and Tobago, and I applaud the Trinidad and Tobago Regiment. The Ministry of Social Development requested their assistance. Immediately they moved into the Riverside Plaza and they have been building out, and it is quite an operation, and at the end when they complete it, the facilities at Riverside Plaza, that is being done by our defense force. When you see the completed project, the end of it, you should be very proud of what the defense force has done. They have revamped the whole inside, they've built out rooms for persons, they've improved the toilet facilities. in a 24 to 48 hour period. This is one of the operations the Defense Force is busy. The preparation of Kuva and Quora, it took place overnight when the Ministry of Health one night a few weeks ago asked us at 9 o'clock at night to prepare to move beds from Kuva to Quora for us to be able to provide facilities for those who may be quarantined and those who may be tested positive for COVID-19. So whilst the rest of the country was sleeping, or the vast majority, the Defense Force got busy, and by the following morning, Kuva and Quora were up and running. They've also been very busy with the Ministry of Health, going from location to location to identify where other medical setups can be provided. They've done the indoor facility in Tacarigua is now outfitted. That was done on the direction of the Ministry of Health by the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force. The securing of all of these facilities is being done by the Defense Force. Quora, Kuva. Last night there was an operation by our Coast Guard to bring a positive patient from Tobago via a Coast Guard vessel that had to be properly sanitized, outfitted for the operation. That took place last night at 4:30 this morning. The Coast Guard, under the supervision of the Ministry of Health, were able to bring the person to Trinidad for that person to get medical attention at either Quora or Kuva. All of the movements of persons, the operation for the persons who came off the cruise ship from Guadeloupe, as soon as their flight arrived, Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force was mandated to take that operation. As soon as people came off the plane into a sanitized bus, the Defense Force were the ones who safely moved them, looked after them, got them to Balandra, secured the Balandra facilities, and continue to do so. The movement of persons from quarantine to facilities is done by the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force. The current facilities of Balandra, Kuva, Quora, and others, the preparation of the Napa facility in case we need to put persons there for quarantine or isolation purposes, Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force. The Brooklyn place in Sandy Grande, Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force. The continued assistance of joint patrols, including the IATF, is being done by the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force in collaboration with the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. Constantly, the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force is being called upon to provide support not only to our police service, who themselves need to be congratulated for really stepping up to the plate once again and doing in a very difficult time what needs to be done to make Trinidad and Tobago a safe and secure time in this pandemic that we're dealing with. One of the things you would have noticed throughout other jurisdictions around the globe is we're seeing in New York, which is now ground zero, the epicenter, unfortunately, in the United States of what is happening with the COVID-19. You're seeing first responders, not only the health workers, the fire service, and the New York Police Department starting to suffer with their numbers. We in Trinidad and Tobago are not immune. About a week ago, just over a week ago, we had a police officer at Aruca who went in for testing, and immediately him and a couple others took out 100 personnel from the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service that we had to put into isolation whilst tests were being carried out, and it led to a temporary shutdown of the Aruca police station. So in our preparation and planning for what may happen, we believe, on the urging of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, with the consultation with National Operation Fusion Center and the Defense Force, that we could have utilized the private security firms, not reinventing the wheel, but going back to what a previous cabinet had gone through with their procurement and the identification of neighborhoods throughout the length and breadth of Trinidad and Tobago to provide support for the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. Right now, we also have our Defense Force guarding the military installations and a number of other places throughout Trinidad and Tobago. Maritime operations, we have 4 of our large patrol vessels out there on the seas conducting operations and continuing to do so. We are assisting in moving patients, not only via maritime, but also on land. All of the movement of patients from various health organizations to Quora, Kuva, and from Balandra and other institutions that are currently under the Ministry of Health is done by the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force. They are providing border security, both at land as well as sea, and now we are also utilizing or Air Guard, which is the air unit for all of our national security, in the type of patrols that are being done. So we have sea and land patrols on our borders taking place, aerial patrols. Our Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force continues to maintain at each of our military bases standby operators, because of course you need, in case something happens, that we can very quickly dispatch to support our Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. So for example, the other day when we had a disturbance at the prison, the outer perimeter of security was immediately provided by the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force. You must always have these standby operators ready to launch at a moment's notice. The same applies for Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard, who are using the interceptors that we've refurbished throughout the Gulf of Paria and in other areas, and they're doing a very good job at it. We're moving persons discreetly on the instructions of the Ministry of Health. So these are just some of the operations that I can talk about. Of course, there are many other operations taking place right now with the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force supporting our Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. People of Trinidad and Tobago, the truth is the pandemic brings additional strain on your resources. The response, if it's going to be a proper response in protecting our population, does bring additional strains, not only in national security, but also in other areas of government. You heard the Minister of Social Development talk about the additional that is being done from the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services. You've been hearing from the Ministry of Health talk about a parallel healthcare system where normal day-to-day activities in the healthcare system continue in addition to a parallel operation to deal with COVID-19. National security is no different. What we had put in place was done properly, as it always is under my tenure, as well as the point is to provide additional support. At no point in time were these patrols going to be armed. At no point in time were these patrols given any additional power, any additional legal authority whatsoever. Those who continue to be estate constables precepted may have powers of arrest under the existing legislation as they currently do. When you go to the vast majority of private institutions in Trinidad and Tobago, your supermarkets, your pharmacies, your banks, it is the private security guards who are providing the service to us in Trinidad and Tobago and supplementing our current law enforcement personnel. This was the whole plan and purpose behind it. It was done as a proactive measure because when we analyzed what was going on and what could come, it was felt after direct conversation, consultation, and suggestions of our Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, Defense Force and Intelligence Services that this would be a step and a move in the right direction in a pre-planning phase in case we start to have strains on our resources of the Defense Force and the Police Service. So I hope by now I've debunked this very loose conversation and the myth that our Defense Force are not doing anything. Persons are also suggesting, but shouldn't the police be the ones to do the patrols? The answer is yes, the police are doing it. You're seeing the police throughout the length and breadth of Trinidad and Tobago doing what it is they're supposed to do and more at this time of our response in a global pandemic and the COVID-19. But everyone has limited resources. It is impossible in Trinidad and Tobago or any country in the world to have police and defense force resources in every neighborhood, on every corner, and doing what needs to be done. So this move, this gesture, this measure was meant to be in the best interest of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Having said all of that, it has become apparent in the last 24 hours, and I did not want to take up yesterday's press conference where we came to discuss the new measures that were announced by the Prime Minister on Monday and to provide clarity dealing with this particular issue. I was going to have a very separate press conference to deal with this. I was giving the patrols 2 days for them to get out there to iron out their kinks and their creases. There are 2 further points to be made. This measure was only put in place until the 5th of May, a few days, 5 days after the current end of our stay-at-home measures on the 30th of April. It was not meant to be a long-term arrangement for a very specific purpose. I will also place on the record here that we negotiated a price that was even cheaper than the initial pilot price that was implemented in 2014, some 6 years ago. And that is how we were protecting the taxpayers of Trinidad and Tobago. So these are the measures that we had put in place in order to add an additional layer of protection for Trinidad and Tobago, not for the implementation or the enforcement of our regulations, not to trample on anybody's rights. That would never have been the intention under this administration. This was meant to provide a level of safety, comfort, and the perception of crime, to tackle that face-on, frontally, in neighborhoods distributed throughout Trinidad and Tobago, neighborhoods agreed to by a previous cabinet in 2014, and we were following exactly that model. Having said all that I've said, it has become apparent in the last 12 to 24 hours that there are certain voices and the population of Trinidad and Tobago and the taxpayers who we respect believe that they currently feel safe enough and there is no need to add any additional layer of security to what our defense force and our police service are doing. They're giving of human service and duty. It is clear to us that many people already feel secure and they believe there is no need for this extra proactive measure that was designed and being implemented to give extra comfort to the population of Trinidad and Tobago. We have heard from the population and are very happy to hear that the population feel secure without the need for any additional measure that was not even going to cost a fraction of what other measures are costing, and only for a period until the 5th of May. So the population have said that they feel safe and they feel secure. And at National Security, after consultation with the Prime Minister, we have taken a decision to immediately cancel this residential patrol system. And as at this time, I'm going to be approaching the 4 security companies, thanking them for stepping forward in a very short time frame, because the first meeting took place last week Friday or last week Thursday, and I asked them to be ready to commence on Monday of this week. They moved heaven and earth to be able to provide that additional layer of comfort to us in Trinidad and Tobago. But having heard from the population and those with the voices, we have taken a decision. I've taken a decision after consultation with the Prime Minister for us to cancel this residential patrol. I hope and wish that Trinidad and Tobago, that God continues to bless us, and we will continue at National Security to do everything we can with our resources to ensure the protection of Trinidad and Tobago and the population of Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister Young. And I would now like to recognize CNC3, Akash Samaru.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Good morning.
Morning,
Hi,
Akash.
Minister. Hi, morning. Minister, you kind of threw me off there with that last point, so the thing is cancelled. Now I have to ask you, we seem to have different Facebook feeds, because is it due to people feeling secure, or is it due to the backlash that this was cancelled? Because I saw more criticisms and people saying they already feel secure, because yesterday it was quite concerning how this information was put forward. We got a media release with very little detail yesterday. Questions were sent to you. You saw the questions, you didn't respond, and there was another hastily sent media release, just a few lines saying they don't have any additional powers. You didn't even tell us at that point that you were planning to clarify in another media conference, so we weren't sure where the information or details were coming from. Did you not anticipate the backlash?
Thank you very much, Mr. Samaru. I don't think sometimes it's appreciated by individuals that when you're messaging me in particular, I can only speak for myself, that I'm also getting messages from a vast and wide variety of other media personnel. So to sit and respond to each media personnel, as opposed to taking a decision to put out a blanket response, taking into consideration the message of what the media are sending you, that is a decision that was taken. Now, I just want to say that what you've recounted there, from my perspective, is not an accurate recount from my perspective. I'm not disputing what you have just said, because what I saw and what was sent to me is a leak from a police station where a specific patrol, because what was asked for by the Commissioner of Police, that each of these patrols in the pre-arranged, pre-agreed neighborhoods would go into the nearest police station log in before, when they finish their patrol, come and log off. That allowed the police to know what was taking place, but it also allowed us to protect the taxpayers and to make sure there was an accountability. What happened was a leaking of that. A particular political operative then picked that up, ran with it on social media. And what I found very interesting is that then another political operative did the same thing. And the questions that I was getting from a variety of persons across the media completely reflected what was being put out. So at that stage, I did not have the opportunity, the ability to do what I'm doing here today, which is come to a media conference and clarify. So we set out press releases, left it at. But I don't know what it is you saw on social media. We are not guided by social media. In fact, what we are guided by is messages relayed to us by the public of Trinidad and Tobago. After consultation with the Prime Minister this morning, it was felt that is the messages coming across. Persons are raising questions with a measure that was being put in place for additional security and additional perception of feeling safe and secure. So a decision was taken. If everyone believes that the police and the defense force are doing enough and they're more than capable, we will go down that road. Because at this time, there is absolutely no need for any distraction. We remain focused in the government. National security remains very focused, and we're clear at the job that we have to do. So this is solely a reaction by persons asking the types of questions. Is this necessary at this time? We've listened. It is now cancelled.
Thank you very much, Minister Young. There was a question from I-95.5 with regards to the closure of restaurants on the Inter-Island Ferry. So we'll go to I-95.5 with Phil Turner to ask your question now to the Minister of National Security.
Question, yes.
Yes, thank you very much. I just wanted to get confirmation with the closure of the restaurants earlier this week and what sort of impact that will have on the cafeterias on the inter-island ferries, whether they are going to be exempted and allowed to continue to operate, or will passengers now have to basically pack a backpack with all their eats and drinks to keep them until they get back home. And while I have you here as well, I don't know if you're able to see, has the Coast Guard detected any sort of maritime activities in keeping with the recent developments in Venezuela? Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't pick up the last part. Has the Coast Guard detected any increased activities with respect to the development of what? I just missed the last part.
Yeah, in terms of the Coast Guard, whether they have seen any activities on the sea that may indicate something that may be taking place in Venezuela in terms of intelligence-wise.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me deal with the second part first. As you ended there, intelligence-wise, so obviously we wouldn't come here on national television and provide any intelligence. But what I can tell you is no, via our radar system, our coastal radar system that expands up the OECS islands as well, there is no unusual activity detected at this time. With respect to your first question, it's a good question. The Minister of Health and myself yesterday were approached on numerous occasions by a vast and wide expanse of persons asking about the delivery of food and the catering of food, etc. Understand that what is driving that policy is a health decision where we've been told that we need to get as many people to stay at home as possible. This country will recall a time prior to all of these catering services, all of this fast food, all of the types of food that are available for purchase. Persons used to pack their lunch, carry their food with them on a daily basis. In fact, I recently have even got myself a lunch kit and do the same thing as best as I can. We are in very unusual times. We don't want to put anybody at risk. I heard Minister Dialsingh answer a question earlier about essential services, and even in essential services, our regulations say only essential workers should be out. So at this stage, our fast ferry does the trip in under 3 hours or about 3.5 hours. And on the cargo ship, well, persons on the cargo ship are accustomed with their long drives, etc. We're asking persons, pack your backpack. I don't think you need as much food as a backpack. Pack your lunch kit. Take your food with you. It is better for you, it's safer, it's more secure from a public health perspective, because you would have done that in the sanitation of your own home and not run the risk of somebody with COVID going up to the counter in the cafeteria, putting their hands down, sneezing on the counter, etc., and then contaminating that area when your food is then passed across to you. This is being done. There is going to be inconvenience. We said that from day one. With measures designed to fight COVID-19 and the spread, there are going to be inconveniences to us all. This is one of the inconveniences. Bear with us. Let's get to April 30th. Let's stop this spread. Let's stay at home. Let's fight this COVID. And sorry, on the ferry, take your food with you, is our advice.
Thank you very much. IETV.
Hi, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, so my question goes out to the National Security Minister. Two quick questions, please. Minister Young, worst case scenario, would the security firm's arrangements be reconsidered if the situation escalates security-wise in TNT? I know you said it was costing a little under or less than it would have cost in 2014. If possible, can you give us the cost, since it will be less or would have been less? And finally, final question. Someone reached out to us via our Facebook page. The person said he and his wife, they traveled on November 19th to the US. Their return ticket was due on April 5th. So they're wondering in terms of the overstaying policy in the US, meaning that their ticket date has passed. Any assistance would any assistance be given to citizens as they are running low on finances? And would you consider temporarily reopening the borders for flights only into TNT, the persons to Barbados, Suriname, and the US only? Thank you.
All right, you asked a host of questions there. Let me start first of all with the cost of the security. Each patrol, we had negotiated a cost for each patrol for this period of a month at $87,000 for the month. The prior cost per patrol in 2014 for the pilot project, which then developed and mushroomed into a much bigger project that cost, I believe, a couple tens of millions of dollars a month. Those patrols in the pilot project were initially about $95,000 in 2014. We got it down to $87,000 for this month, and we were intending to go for the month. With respect to your question on the particular incident of persons who are in the USA, the borders are closed. At the end of the day, there are very few planes flying in the world when you look at what is happening. One thing that seems to be agreed by all of the countries in the world, because they've all closed their airports except for absolutely emergency travel, is the best thing to do is to stay in place. International airlines have stopped flying for a reason, to stop the spread of COVID. The particular persons you're referring to, of course, no government is responsible for the cost of change of tickets, etc. We understand the inconveniences being caused to persons. That is what our embassies and our consulates around the world are for. We have quite a number in the United States. Reach out to them. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs will become aware. That is one of the things our embassies and our consulates are there for. You have Washington, you have Miami, you have New York in the United States. Reach out to them. We are not going to be just opening the borders. The borders are closed until the 30th of April. We deal with requests for exemptions, but at the end of the day, the safest thing for persons to do is stay exactly where they are. One of the worst places to be on is an international aircraft at this stage. I was exposed to something, and I guess I could share it very carefully with the population. I saw an email, an international email. I was included in this email in error, where a person had tested positive for COVID-19. And the airline's conversation was all about putting that positive tested person for COVID on one of their last flights and allowing the person to travel. And it happened. You have no idea when you sit on an airplane who next to you, who in the plane, especially at this time, may be carrying the virus. So that is not a good idea. I think I've answered all of your questions.
Thank you very much. Priya Bihari.
Hi, good morning, Priya Bihari.
Morning, Priya.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Minister Young, while you were speaking about the embassies abroad, I've gotten a lot of complaints that the embassy, for example, in the UK, the High Commission in the UK, is one that people cannot seem to get any information from. They have sent emails even before the lockdown, and they haven't received an email, or they have made calls, and it appears that it has been closed long time ago. That's one question. When you were speaking about the cancellation of the of the private security firms, you said that, you know, if people feel they are a bit safe now, that, you know, basically cancel it. I sense a bit of sarcasm there. Can you just clarify that? You know, because you gave the impression that we as citizens feel we are safer, and then, you know, so you should cancel those private security firms. One, and the other question is, are you saying that all the members of the defense force are occupied in carrying some beds from Hoover to Cora and right other stuff, and trying to help to make secure a place to carry COVID-19 patients who are recovering? They are protecting Napa, they are doing joint patrols, and they are guarding the military institutions. Can you give me an idea how many members of defense force there is, and is it that all of them are occupied doing these things? And in the sense that, why couldn't there been additional joint patrols at no additional cost to the taxpayer?
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, let me clarify, there's absolutely no sarcasm delivered in my messaging here this morning. The government has been listening to what the population have said in the last 12 to 24 hours and have taken the decision to cancel the private security firm. So there is no distraction left. We are dealing with something very serious, a deadly virus. We are trying to beat this virus and beat the spread of it. There's no need for any distraction at this time. With respect to that last point that was being made, I want to draw an example. To me, people always understand best when it directly relates to them. Every day, the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Communication have a press conference, and it's now a virtual press conference. And I always look at the media personnel who are present. Each media house has a handful of media personnel, and you are given different assignments. So you're not going to see from a specific media house all of their media personnel here covering this. It is the same thing with the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force or Police Service. You have a shift system. Those Defense Force and Police Service, they work on shifts. So not every single officer is going to be out at the same time. Otherwise, you're going to have burnout. There's a rotation. So that is what is taking place. At no point in time did I say that all of them are carrying beds to Couva and to Cora and protecting Napa. And those are the additional duties. There's been no step down of duties and response by the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force. So everything that is the reality of protecting Trinidad and Tobago prior to COVID continues. They continue with all of those operations. You now have additional operations. So it is the same all around in every single essential service. It's no different to the doctors and the nurses, where you have a certain number, and what you have to do is logistically decide who will do what, but make sure that you have persons resting. So as soon as that shift ends, you have the other set come on board. And suppose now this thing heads further south, which God forbid, and we are all hoping doesn't. You then need to call upon further reserves. So one of the things we've done in contingency planning at National Security, I've asked the police service and our defense force to look at recently retired officers, not ones who, look at the ones who can come back out to duty. And we have a contingency plan for that if we reach there. So we're continuously planning. Your first question was with respect to embassy closure. That does not fall under my purview and portfolio, but we also need our embassy staff, wherever they are in the world, to be safe and to adhere to the specific regulations and laws that may be in place in those countries. There's a Ministry of Foreign Affairs, which is the headquarters. You can reach out to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. But if persons, and we have Trinidadians scattered all over the globe, the first place that experienced this was China. I remember the Minister of Health, the Minister of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs, and myself, in January of this year, When it broke out in China and China began their shutdown, we had 120 nationals of Trinidad and Tobago spread throughout the length and breadth of China. We didn't bring them home because it was safer for them to stay there in place. What we did is have our embassy reach out, make contact. That eventually was done. These things may take time. I can tell you, our embassy in Caracas, for example, has been in contact with persons, and our officers at our embassy in Caracas are to be thanked because a few of them have taken money out of their own pockets to provide to nationals. They've arranged certain arrangements for persons or nationals who are in Caracas and Margarita. They told me about it yesterday. For example, their hotel bill reduced to 10 US a day, and they don't have to pay until the end of all of this and Venezuela reopens their borders. We are in very strange, difficult, and unusual times across the globe. We will do what we can, but the main thing is for people to stay safe.
Thank you very much.